luck with, but hey, we're doing it again.
Something live.
Yeah, so off we go. So, welcome, Sober on Purpose audience, Blessed Family Recovery audience. I am here with Bill Sinyard. We are going live after we've taken some time to figure this out and pretty excited about it. So, one of the things that we're talking about with Bill is telling stories that matter. And Bill is not only a pastor, but he's a novelist for children. He writes things for adults too. And as we're getting ready for the Blessed Family Recovery Summit, Where is God in the Midst of Addiction? Bill, tell us the power of story in families.
Yeah, it's surprisingly how important it is. There's a new study. I just tracked this down for parents who read to their children daily between the ages of 6 to 18 months. The parents had lower stress levels and were more sensitive to their children's needs, were warmer to their children, and therefore their children attuned better and grew up the next stage of life, which starts about age 2. They were more receptive to relationship, to obedient. They were happier in general, all of the things equal. They were emotionally, they regulated quicker. And that's partly due to parents just reading books to their children. And that's as infants. Same thing happens during adolescence where social media increases stress, gets cortisol. And by the way, stress is the shredder of teenage brains. I mean, we now know that it exposes things like depression and anxiety and such. So if you want to keep your child their anxiety and depression down, and one of the ways that God has created our brains is good stories that are not stressful. So that's what I mean by good stories. It works. I think one study had 68% reduction in stress after a teenager read a book.
That's totally amazing. And when I think back to when my guys were little, we read it was bedtime stories, hug, kiss, and a prayer. So it had,
Yeah,
a wrapper around it, but also I could get all these books from the library, right? It
right.
wasn't that it
Oh yeah.
cost me anything. Goodnight Moon is there. We were just talking about Pow Pow Fish, but then we had also a pictorial Bible, and they just
Yeah.
loved it because the pictures were
Right.
all there. So this reduction of stress, and as we're talking about this in the framework of dealing with addiction, what else are
Mhm.
we giving kids when we're reading to them?
You're helping their brain actually create a framework of whether your child sees the world as receptive and positive, that is a playground they can play in versus something that's dangerous and frightening and something that needs to be avoided. It's just how they feel about themselves. We now know that the readers actually enter into the sandals of the protagonist, and so if the protagonist struggles with the same thing they struggle with, it becomes they actually kind of enter their lives. And if it works out well at the end, they actually get a dopamine hit from that and they feel good about themselves. And it's almost like their problems go away a little bit. And this is
Mhm.
all just sitting there and reading a good book. And by the way, if you read stress creating books, so I would argue that for ages 10 to 16, Hunger Games would be one of those, and Dune would be that. Almost every one of the Marvel books and movies. But if you're reading Harry Potter, for instance, even though there's bad guys, even though there's struggles and battles, kids end up having less stress at the end because everything works out well and the hero is good and it ends well. Same thing with Tolkien. Same thing with Lewis, and same thing with my books. They are designed to reduce our children's stress and improve how they see the world and themselves.
Absolutely. And what we know about addiction is it
Mm,
is a way that people use to manage stress or manage hurt or manage
yeah,
trauma. They
exactly.
use it because it works, right? And you're telling me that I can start reading to my kids, I can start building in them a narrative where they can be overcomers. I mean, C.S. Lewis in
Yeah.
Narnia, there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of there are wars and things that happen there. So
Yeah.
how do you see that
Yeah.
happening for
That's a
kids and their
great
brains?
question. That's a great question, and Tolkien and Lewis both addressed this in their writings. Is you don't want to create a false world for your teenager. There's bad things that are happening. There's bad people out there, but in the end, a storyline, and this would include their view of the storyline of life. If it ends with this providential good God taking care of them, taking care of working justice, solving crime, making sure that hurt people are restored, and the bad people, the bad crimes are paid for, then the child gets a healthy biblical worldview where there is a God who is working all things together for good, even though bad things happen. And so you can
Mm,
have evil forces, you can have bad things happen, you can have sad things happen, deaths, suffering, and stuff. But overall, a biblical worldview book, I would argue, has this behind it, this silent providence, whether it's named or unnamed, where all things work out together for good, even though it's above our pay grade. And our child, that just unleashes this, I have pain, I have things that I haven't resolved, I have these issues, I have these secrets, but that character in the book had them too. And somehow it all worked out. Maybe my brain says, yeah, maybe it'll work out maybe with me as well. And so my anxiety drops. It doesn't solve it, right? Plus, in addition to that, which pushes back on addiction, there's also dopamine hits when kids
mm.
are reading the book. They can actually become, and we become addicted to good books, and that's a healthy addiction.
Right. And there's a piece in here, we were talking about it. We talk about it in the Blessed Family Recovery Summit about quests and why
Yes.
quests are so important, especially for teens as they're sorting out who
Yeah.
they are.
Yeah, yeah. God directed, providential directed quests. I mean, there's quests that just drive you crazy. It's like, everywhere you turn, bad things happen, and you go to another, everything bad happens. That's a bad quest. But the quest, the ones where you feel like you're actually sent, it's got a purpose, even though you don't know it. You're going through problems and issues and failures, and like my first fantasy book, the prince wants to prove himself to his father. His father, the king, already loves him, but he can't receive it, just like every teenage boy on the planet. So he
Yes.
says, give me a quest so I can prove myself. And he fails every turn and has to end up going back to the king in failure. And all right, spoiler alert, all the king does is knight his son because he loves that much. Not because
Mhm.
he achieved anything, but and at that point in time in the failure, the prince was actually willing to receive the kingdom, which couldn't do it before. There was a growth, there was process, and the prince, teenager, actually felt honored, felt loved, and that happens when the king actually loves us. So guided quest, providentially guided quest, even through great struggles, even through hell, even through death, can work out
And
and be
that's
healing.
that's very reminiscent of the prodigal son. The son
Oh,
comes
yeah.
back with the whole apology of I'm just going to be a servant. I'm not worthy.
Mhm.
And the father says, "No, that's not how things work here. You're alive. I'm just
Yeah.
glad you're alive."
Well, it's a trajectory of the entire scripture, right? So God loves Adam and Eve. They mess up, but God doesn't abandon them. He keeps pursuing them and pursuing and pursuing. When we read Revelation, the perfect garden is actually restored with a full, completed humanity that have all been rescued. And it's been through history of, oh, come on, easily ups and downs, and God just keeps pursuing. He sends his son. His son kept pursuing the broken, the needy, and it's just the storyline that God has kind of created into creation and therefore into our brains. Anything apart from that, which would include legalism on one side, where I have to actually be perfect and worthy, to on the other side, I've messed up, and so God can't like me, can never receive me. Those are bad narratives. And the thing in the middle, the sweet spot in the middle, is the way I put it, is there's a God who actually loves the unlovable, the unloved, and the unlovely. He loves failures. Paul found out he loves thorns in the flesh. This is our God. And the more we can get that in our teens' brain, the better. by the time they're teenagers, they're not listening to us very well. But
Mhm.
something about stories lowers their defenses, and they can pick these things up, and it begins to subtly rewire their midbrains. Subtle, it's sneaky, and it obviously works.
Yes. So, what I want to do, Bill, is invite people to come to the Blessed Family Recovery Summit on October 24th. It is a free summit for 3 days. You are one of the fabulous 16 speakers, and we talk really in depth. You also have given us some great offers for some of your books to start reading those. And then we're going to have more discussion in the Facebook and Instagram groups that go along with that. But the key that we're talking about here is families often bring a very dark narrative around addiction. So how can these books, how can these things help the family to bring a different narrative?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's tough when it gets into that cycle, when the teens have already kind of hardened. But the beautiful thing is, for adolescents, that's really God's created mulligan, the redo. It's a
Uh-huh.
chance where the neurons and the connectors have blossomed, like your teen's brains at puberty looks like a chia pet. So for the rest of 10 years, 11 years, their brain is pruning those things, carving things off, and it's a use it, lose it thing. So if you start when your teen is 12 and it's difficult relationship with the entire family, and it's like a walking on landmines, you have this opportunity to start culling and start shaping. And this goes on until they're well in their 20s. So it's a day by day, week by week. You invest positively in your child and your relationship and the entire family, and it works. It is the way God presented. You haven't messed it up, is kind of what I'm saying, though in some cases it's very, very difficult. There can be some hardening, but that usually doesn't happen until 25, 26, 27. Right now,
So,
even though it doesn't appear it, your child is pliable.
at 16, 17, 18, they're still listening. Now you have some really you have a parent course too. You have some really
Yeah.
great things that you tell parents to do to put money in the positive bank. Can you
Oh,
share
yeah.
a couple of those tips?
Yeah, the Good Enough Parent program. It's online, goodenoughparent.online. It's free. There's a second for more advanced parents, but it's absolutely free. And we talk a lot about attunement, adolescent attunement. Infant attunement is when the mother looks at the child and their eyes connect and the brains start popping dopamine. Same thing with adolescents. We actually teach parents tips and tricks how they can attune with even the most difficult adolescent, and it takes some time. It takes a little bit of time, and what do you do when your teen blows up when you try to force them to eat their Brussels sprouts, and why are they doing that, and how do you not take that personally? How is your attachment style rubbing against your teens, and how can you make a difference? There's little things like we found this from a psychologist, a shoulder move, where we teach parents how to put your hand on the shoulder of your teen, get their attention, and just say things like, you know what? I just want to let you know I would buy stock in you. I'm going to be there forever. Got your back. You can fail, but you're still mine. I still love you. It won't matter. Hey, good talk, and walk off. And you do that on random amounts. We teach these fun, doable things that might start to actually rebuild your teen's midbrain. There is really some science behind this, in addition to spiritual stuff, and of course we actually give parents a prayer to say, actually a sermon for their midbrain, so they can actually begin to feel God's love. A lot of parents of teens that I work with feel like they've messed up and they're a screw up as a parent, and God is just sitting there in heaven with arms crossed and just so disappointed with them. And they go, I just wish God would bring a different parent, and we can help you understand. We can give you a tool to help you understand that, oh, no, 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 God actually loves failed parents.
Yes. And I love that piece. You said it really quick of, "Okay, I would by stalking you, I'm gonna be here.
Mhm,
Good
mhm.
talk." And you walk off. Most teens would be like, "Where did
Yeah,
my
it's
mom go? That's not normally the
yes.
talk we have." So that's
Someone has called
fabulous.
it drive-by shootings, but it's very effective.
Drive-by praising, right? Drive-by
Drive
praising. Whoop,
yeah,
off we
drive-by
go.
attunement. It's amazing our kids really want this, and so when I and you know this, when you teen, whether they're addicted or whether they're abused or whether they're hurt or whether they have low self-esteem, all the things that 10, 11, 12, 13, 14-year-olds have, and you get a parent, they've been with that child for 10, 11, 12, 13, and they're feeling the same thing.
Yes.
And if the gospel actually has something to say about that, and if the Spirit of God can actually go into the parent's soul or inner being, whatever, wherever that is, and make them feel loved as they are,
Yes.
and can do the same thing for the child, make them feel loved as they are, acne, overweight, underweight, whatever it is, bullied. If the Holy Spirit can actually make them feel a little more loved, boy, doors open up between the parents and the child. Perfect. This isn't
Mhm.
heaven, you know, this is still a fallen place, but
Mhm.
dramatic differences, dramatic.
Awesome. That is what we are bringing in the summit, the Blessed Family Recovery Summit, October 24th, and completely free. We are bringing the sense of God into this very messy area of addiction, this very messy area of how do I
Oh,
love my person and
mhm,
maintain boundaries.
mhm,
And we're
mhm.
sharing just so many deep God stories and turnarounds. So, this is all about hope.
Perfect.
And I would
Yeah,
love for your audience, Bill, for my audience, we are really looking for people to turn up and be loved on, get hope, and learn how to tell stories that matter.
and to let your folks know you're not alone. Oh my goodness, you are not the only
Absolutely.
parent of teen thinks they're doing great are people who are in denial.
Absolutely. I believe it. Bill, thank you so much for taking this time out with me. And we both learned some technical stuff. So that means our brains are still plastic too, right?
I'm guessing. We'll see if we just destroyed the internet though.
We'll see. All right, October 24th. Be sure and
Can't
grab
wait.
that link. We will have that in all the places underneath these videos. Thank you so much, Bill.
Thank you so much.